Welcome, Sarah, to the Biohacker Babes. Thank you so much for joining us today, stateside.
Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely to have this. We've delayed it a few times, so it's great to be on at last and really nice to see your faces.
Yeah,
Me
thanks. It
too.
it, it always happens because it's meant to, right?
Yes,
You're supposed to be here, and
perfect
we
time.
bump we see you at every conference, and it's the right timing. But you've been meaning to be on the podcast for a long time. We've been meaning to have you here, so we're really excited because our audience is very familiar with red light. And they're like pretty familiar with gut brain axis, but I don't think that they know about the combination, why light can be so impactful on the gut brain axis. And that is your world. That is what you're really good at.
For sure.
Kick us off. What do we need to know about red light and gut brain axis, or what first led you to discovering this very powerful connection?
Yeah, so actually when I first started out, my background is neuroscience. So I was really all about the brain. That's kind of my thing. I'm really about the brain. I just think, if you need to have one focus on your health, it needs to be the brain. If you've got a good brain, you can deal with everything else. And we have this amazing organ that with consciousness and we're thinking, it's just so incredibly fascinating. So I started out actually with the intention of looking at how we could utilize red light for a brain function. And I started really by looking at Parkinson's disease, just because I was looking into researchers who were doing research into red light for the brain and seeing if anybody would let me hop on getting some data collection because I wanted to see firsthand. And my background is actually, I was a research scientist in a previous life. So, that enables me to kind of hop in and out of these trials. So it just so happened the one that was going on that I managed to get involved with was Parkinson's. So I was involved in a trial, very interesting trial. I was looking at collecting data analysis for walking speed and gait and tremor and all those things we associate with Parkinson's, also blood biomarkers. And it worked, it really worked. And I could see it was really working. It was a sham trial. It wasn't like I was party to information to know whether people were getting an active treatment or not. But it was very obvious by the end of the trial, the people that got the active treatment. And so really that's what got me started in wanting to develop a product that was more accessible for people. And also I do also have a background of more naturopathic medicine. I've got a nutrition degree. So I was very aware of the gut-brain connection. And especially for something like Parkinson's, it's very important. So I was thinking, this therapy would probably work a lot better if we also targeted the gut at the same time. Initially my mind was going there with Parkinson's sufferers because Parkinson's is very intrinsically linked to the gut. In fact, the symptoms of Parkinson's probably start in the gut a long time before you see the brain symptoms. But actually, when you can apply it to almost any of these brain wellness conditions, autistic spectrum disorder, neurodegeneration, almost anything has this gut-brain connection because we are holistic organisms. Everything is intrinsically linked. You can't isolate one organ, and especially the gut is hugely important for brain wellness. So that's really why I'm focusing all my kind of time into doing the gut and the brain at the same time, is just to be holistic. And because they are so intrinsically linked, we have a lot of neural tissue in our gut. Our neurotransmitters are made in our gut. We kind of intuitively know it because if we're feeling nervous or agitated about a situation, we feel it in our guts, right? So we know there is this connection, but actually I think science is now moving forward with really making this connection and how we can actually target the gut for a brain health function. And conversely, if you have gut issues, sometimes they're caused by people kind of having compulsive thoughts or stressing all the time. So it's kind of bio-directional. So that's really why I've got this red light device. Like I say, my main thing that I want to target is brain health, but also targeting the gut is the way to do it, I think.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. It's really cool to see more and more research coming out too about specifically Parkinson's, like,
Yeah.
potentially different gut microbes that are higher in patients with Parkinson's, poor gut microbiome diversity. Like the research is really fascinating. So maybe let's take a quick step back, like the gut brain axis is, if someone's not familiar with that, if they've missed previous episodes or whatever, like why is this two-way connection so important and how does it work? Because you're right, people are familiar with like the gut feeling, the stress feeling, but scientifically, what is happening with that connection there?
Yeah, scientifically, well, for a start, we know that the gut and brain are connected by the vagus nerve, which is actually it's more like a nervous system. You know, the vagus nerve, it's called vagus because it means wandering. It kind of goes all over our body, but it connects our gut with our brains. And in humans, we have an additional branch of vagus nerve, which also is responsible for like our facial tone and illness behaviors and things like that. So the gut and the brain are very much connected by this nerve. And actually we get more information from the gut going to the brain than the other way around, which is very interesting because it just goes to show how important those signals are from the gut to our thoughts, to our behaviors, to our mood. And then also you mentioned the microbiome. You know, the microbiome is another thing where research is just exploding at the moment, because we're now beginning to understand the importance of our microbiome and the different species that we have. In actual fact, we probably have more bacterial cells than we do human cells, which again is something that's strange to ponder because it kind of makes you realize, okay, these are very, very important. You know, there are more of these cells than there are actual human cells. We should probably pay attention to looking after them and knowing kind of the composition of those. So in the gut, we have probably about 3 pounds actually of bacteria sitting there. Which are responsive to light, because from an ancestral point of view, we think that bacteria are like mitochondria, which is where we get energy in our bodies. So we have this kind of connection already to how our body systems are working. So the mitochondria, which is where we make energy, and bacteria both are very responsive to light. So we have this like 3 pounds worth of bacteria that are sensing light, giving information to our body and brains about what to do with that, and also emitting chemical signals. So if you have a disrupted microbiome, they call it dysbiosis. It just means, you know, you have too many of the bad ones. You are putting like all chemicals from those into the bloodstream or via the vagus nerve, and that ends up in the brain. So we have this very real connection between the gut and the brain. And as I mentioned, you actually have neural tissue, you have brain tissue in the gut. The gut kind of has its own enteric nervous system, and we make a lot of neurotransmitters in the gut. So it is actually like a second brain, or maybe even a first brain. You know, the gut comes first if we're talking about embryology. So there is a connected system. It is vitally important to look after both. And yeah, that it's connected via nervous system, by stem cells, via the bacteria, and by the blood, basically.
Human body is
so
amazing.
powerful. It is so amazing. But I like that, like there truly is kind of a chicken or the egg. It starts with the gut with embryology. I love that you mentioned that. Can you talk about some underlying root causes that would affect a gut brain axis that would lead to dysfunction in one or the other, whether someone is symptomatic or not?
Yeah, and I think this again is another topic where we're beginning to like understand, like you've probably heard the term leaky gut, right? Where you have the cells of the gut become leaky in that they're not quite pushed together as they should be. And that causes systemic inflammation, which definitely causes brain inflammation. But that's caused by things like maybe toxins. And by toxins, it could be pesticides, it could be perfumes, it could be things that people are putting on their skin, it could be ultra-processed foods. It can even be things like, you know, too much exposure to Wi-Fi and blue light. You know, that's also something that's toxic to the body and causes the body to have these reactions. So I think a lot of people have got leaky gut right now, or at least they have the symptoms of it. Maybe they don't attribute it to having that leaky gut because we're all exposed to a huge amount of toxins on a daily basis. Also, if you have an injury, you know, that can also lead to inflammation. Some people, not many, but some people maybe are not exposed to a lot of toxins, but maybe they've had some kind of injury. So the way that we get this damage is unfortunately just daily life. You know, it's things, you know, even fine particles in the air. If you live in a city and you're breathing in diesel fumes, with something we can't really avoid right now. It just depends on your general state of health, how much energy you've got to deal with it, and then that will express itself to a greater or a lesser extent, depending on the toxin load and your ability to cope with it.
Yeah,
Right.
detoxification capacity, but everyone's body burden is different depending on. I have a client this morning, lives in California, and he said as a kid, after playing outside he would come home from playing sports and have to sit in front of a fan because there was such a burden on his lungs and respiratory system, because in California, there's just all kinds of stuff in the air. And that was just like a normal thing that kids did, you know? So everyone has a different burden depending on where you live. And then, as you said, like, can your body handle it?
Anybody handle it? Yeah, you're right. It depends where you live. It also depends on your genetics, and it depends on how you're living the rest of the time. You know, obviously, the more you can kind of do all the things, the grounding, the good food, the good water, if you've been blessed with good genetics, and if you're fortunate enough to live somewhere where you haven't got such exposure, they're all factors that come into it. Do you live in a city? Do you live in a rural area? But I think for most people, you know, we're pretty much bombarded with toxins, so it's difficult to escape some of it. All we can do is kind of do all of those things that strengthens our body so that we have a better chance of dealing with it.
Right. We have to do all the things that we can control so that we can overcome the things we can't control.
Exactly.
So now it seems like there is a rise in a lot of mental health issues today. And I know some of that could just be there's more conversation around it. People are putting labels on it, talking about it more. But how much of it do you think is coming from poor gut health or light deficiency, you know, outdoor deficiency, nature deficiency, combination, anything else you would add to the list?
More EMFs.
Yeah, I think
more EMFs.
I mean, we live in a information technology era. You know, all of us are kind of now on screens, you know, almost exclusively. And we're leading very much indoor lifestyles. And I think, you know, that's probably a lot of the burden. We're also kind of overloaded with information. I think, you know, things are speeding up. You know, all of this AI business is great, but it kind of, I don't know about you, but it allows me to do more work, but it doesn't reduce my workload. It just means I can work faster. And in actual fact, I think I'm doing more than I've done, because now I can get a lot done. You know, I could be emailing a lot of people at once. Of course, it means I'm getting so many more emails back. So I think that is probably a huge contributory factor. And like you say, you know, blue light from technology, you know, that I don't think it's coincidental that this kind of rise in mental health in children coincides with a rise of exposure to blue screens and all these other toxins that we just spoke about. I think it does take a huge toll on our mental health, and it's difficult because we are still in relatively primitive bodies from a biology point of view, and we're living indoor lifestyles. So to try and balance that, I think for a lot of people, again, even that can be like stressful, you know. I should be outside, I should be doing this, and now I have to do this work. You know, we all have to kind of hustle to make a living. So I think, yes, for sure, that it does seem to me that, you know, stress, anxiety, depression, all these things are on the rise, probably because we are exposed to a lot more technology and a lot more toxins.
We always like to ask about the ancestral component. Like, if we made a joke, like our ancestors weren't putting red light on their gut, but light has always been a part of human existence. We can't fight the rise and the fall of the sun.
Right. Yeah. But we've only had light bulbs for 100 years.
Yeah, 200 years probably.
Or 200 years.
For sure. We've had probably whatever it is, you know, 200,000 years of evolution, and then 200 years of artificial light. But from an ancestral point of view, you're right. You know, we weren't using red light devices, but we were out at sunrise and sunset. So that's when we get these relatively long wave light, because, you know, the sun contains all different spectrums of light, but because of the angle of the sun, you know, at sunrise and sunset, that's when we predominantly get this red light. And so, you know, people also say that to me, oh, you know, this isn't natural, this technology. And I say, no, you don't need it. Actually, as long as you get up every morning at sunrise, you stand with your bare feet on the ground, you embrace sunrise, if possible, naked, and then you do the same at sunset. But just so few of us are doing. And I think it's just a chronic deficiency in that red light wavelength. I see it like any other deficiency. You know, if you never ate any kind of fruit or vegetables at all, you'd get a vitamin C deficiency. And the way to solve that would be to replace the vitamin C. And I think it's just the same with red light. You're totally right. It's something that we are exposed to naturally. We were exposed to it as kind of diurnal mammals. From an evolutionary point of view, we're animals that are meant to be outside. We're meant to see sunrise and sunset. When we don't see it, we become deficient in those wavelengths. So these devices are just helping us to treat that deficiency. I think it really is as
Okay.
simple as that. We are covered in red light receptors, actually. Our bodies and our brains are covered in these receptors that receive long wave red light. So, they're there for a reason. If we don't see those wavelengths, we're not getting that message. Our biology changes if we don't see red and near infrared light, specifically from healing. All of the wavelengths of the sun, are doing different things to our biology, but the healing side is the red light side. And I think that's why a lot of people get these chronic conditions, because if you never get the message that switches the body into a healing mode, which is red and near infrared, you never go into that healing mode. And then your body is kind of just constantly trying to deal with these deficiencies till it gets to breaking point. And that's where people start to manifest symptoms.
Yeah.
That's really cool to think that our ancestors had this on their clock, on their daily schedule, this diurnal healing time to start and end the day. And now we're bathed in blue light, mostly from artificial. And we're all out of sync. We're all out of whack.
We're all out of whack.
Yeah.
Because the middle of the day is when you would see blue, and that's when your kind of body is saying, okay, this is not healing time. Now it's time to go and forage for food or find a mate or build a home. So if you then start to do that when it's healing time, what do? We start foraging in the fridge, start acting up at night, start not being able to sleep because, your body's just, you're giving the body the wrong message at the wrong time of day. And I think it really is as simple as that. It's difficult. We want all this technological explanations. People want me to get very granular about exactly which enzyme is resonating on the mitochondria membrane. And we know all of that. But from a very simple point of view, I think the closer we can get to living a lifestyle which is more in tune with our biology, the more we become healthy. So even without knowing any of the kind of complex biochemistry, we just need to perhaps think about, okay, how does this align with how my ancestors would have lived? Can I live a little bit more like that? Does this technology move me towards that? And if it does, then it's, maybe it's a good technology. None of the red light therapy, as long as it's just pure red light, it's not putting anything alien into the body. It's nothing that the body doesn't recognize. It's the same wavelength of light as you would get from the sun. It's just a different delivery mechanism. We're just using an LED, but the body recognizes that light in the same way.
Yeah. And what wavelength is that? Sunrise, sunset.
So visible red, it's around about like 600 up to about 1300 nanometers. That's red.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Red. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I didn't realize it goes that high. Okay, cool.
That's a good, because the sun has like a range, and we really, we kind of, when we're like the manufacturers of red light therapy, let's say we look for very specific targets in the body. So we know that there is one particular target inside the mitochondria, and we know the absorption peak. So we can kind of plot, okay, where does that particular enzyme absorb the most of that red light? And so we can say, okay, it's around about 610 to 630 nanometers. So most red light devices you'll see are targeting that narrow range because we have the scientific evidence for that. And then when you make a jump into near infrared, we're also looking at that cytochrome C oxidase, which is in the mitochondria. So we know it has another peak around 850. So you'll see that red light therapy devices are usually using something like 610, 630, and then 850, something around there. It's not to say that none of the other wavelengths don't do anything. It's just we don't at the moment have the data to show what it's doing in the body. So that's why devices have very specific wavelengths. My device actually goes a bit longer because I'm also targeting water in the body, because water will also absorb light, and we are mainly water. So I also target a longer wave, which is 940 and 1070. Some of the manufacturers don't want to do that, because if the water's absorbing it, then the mitochondria aren't. It just depends on what you're focusing on. But I want to target all the potential light receivers in the body. So I have 4 wavelengths. But really, that's why people choose specific wavelengths for red light therapy devices, because we want to know that it's being received by something we can measure. And that's not to say that we know everything, because I'm sure as we start to, learn more and more about light, we'll start to see other chemicals in the body that are potentially absorbing different wavelengths. I'm personally looking at green, because now I'm looking at opsins and about how they resonate with that particular wavelength. So I think the sun has a broad spectrum. Light manufacturers focus on the one where we actually have evidence to back it up. It's not to say that the other ones aren't doing anything. It's just at the moment we're trying to focus to be scientific, because that's really, if you want to have a device that's credible, that's what we need right now. But, anything in the body that has like a certain aromatic structure, like a molecule that has a certain shape, will resonate with light in some way. So I'm sure we're going to discover in the future all kinds of different wavelengths that are doing all different things in the body, because our bodies are just so amazing, and we're just now working out, just quite how profound the effect of light on biology is.
And it makes so much sense, because if you wipe away our supplements, even our food, our homes, all we have is light. And we did exist without it before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with I just one more question about the wavelengths. So I've heard 1070 for brain. Is that where the research is showing? And also, I mean, your red light is going here versus some people are putting it on top of the head. Is it really getting through to the brain?
Yeah, well, 1070 is an interesting wavelength that people are starting to look at. Like I say, water does absorb that wavelength, and that could be something very good in the brain, because it could be that you're having this then global effect on the brain if you're changing the structure of water in the brain. This is something that's in the early stages of research. Also, cytochrome C will resonate to a certain extent at that wavelength, but more the water is absorbing it. So people are starting to look at the different wavelengths in the brain. Also, it's a longer wave. So potentially it could penetrate, it has to penetrate the skull. The red light won't do that, because red light is very surface level. Anything under like red on the visible spectrum, that light is not going to penetrate through your skull. So if you want to have something that's going to actually get onto your brain, you need to have these near infrareds. So yeah, people are looking at like the 850s and the 1070s. But even then, you're only going to get onto a little surface of the brain. You're not getting right deep into the brain. So something's going on, because we get great effect with Parkinson's, and yet that's something that we know is caused by damage to really deep inside the brain. The substantia nigra is really deep in the brain. So we're only getting onto the surface of the cortex. You're right. My device goes on here because I want to target the frontal cortex. And also I want a device where I can kind of safely say that I'm giving everybody the same dose. If you have a device that goes on top of the hair, it could be a totally different dose from someone who's got like a very dense afro to someone who's got no hair, and then it's difficult to know what dose someone's getting, because anything with a very dark pigment is going to absorb a lot of the light. So from my point of view, I'm not saying they don't work, the transcranials. I'm just saying potentially the dosing is going to be different depending on hair. Maybe hair's acting as waveguides. There's all kinds of things that I think we're still trying to work out. But from my point of view, I think this part here, the frontal cortex, is where you make decisions. It's where a lot of the brain connections, they all project out onto the prefrontal cortex. So from my point of view, this is a really good place to deliver light to the brain. But different people have different strategies, and the data is pretty good for all of these transcranial devices right now. So I think time will tell which of those strategies is correct. I just like to know that I'm giving people the best chance of this is an optimal dose.
Yeah, I'm sure at this point everyone listening is wondering, like, what does CeraThrive look like? Because we've seen red light panels, or maybe we've seen a cap for your hair, but what is CeraThrive? Can you explain what it looks like and what
I can show you, as long as this filter doesn't kind of filter it out. Let's have a go.
Yeah. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see this, but if you're listening to the audio,
I'll describe it for those people who can't see it. So this is just like a headband, kind of like a Wonder Woman headband that goes.
It's so cool.
And it's awesome. Clusters. So you can see here, these clusters you can see the visible red, because I did want to target the blood and the skin around, that's still a good target, but most of the output is coming from near infrared, which is invisible. And then I do have one here, which is for the cerebellum, which is the movement center of the brain. Again, this one does go over the hair area. So I have found you have to kind of tuck it in under the skull ridge. But I can model it for you, ladies, so that I look like Superwoman.
Is any of that dangerous for your eyes? Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Is it dangerous for your eyes to see any of that light? I mean, I know obviously when you're wearing it, it's not, but if you're like handling it, do you have to worry about eye protection at all?
No, and in actual fact, there's a lot of studies going on right now where they're finding that this kind of light is beneficial for the eyes. But I don't advocate staring into bright lights, because, if you've got any kind of fluid buildup, you are increasing blood flow with red light. So I don't recommend,
Okay.
but I can quite happily, kind of glance at this. I can use it. It's not going to cause any
Yeah.
damage to the eyes. And these are LEDs. This is the benefit of using LEDs over laser, that is very safe to handle. And, I have friends who kind of give these devices to their babies, and their babies are kind of playing with them and putting them on. And I feel totally confident about that. You
Wow.
just wouldn't want to kind of sit and stare at it for a long time.
Just
But
like you
there
don't
is
want to stare at the sun, right?
exactly. It's just common sense, and it's uncomfortable, so you just wouldn't do it. But
Yeah.
there is a device called Lumathera that's currently got FDA approval for treating dry macular degeneration. And it's the first treatment for dry macular degeneration, I believe, for a long time, because there isn't a drug treatment. But it's, again, I'm not advocating people do it for that. You'd need to go and use that machine, but it's a machine where you look in and it gives you a specific dose. But that's very interesting, because that's showing that actually, utilizing these wavelengths of light correctly, you can treat a lot of illnesses that we thought were untreatable. So macular degeneration, not a very nice disease. You start to see a spot in the middle of your vision that slowly expands until you can't see anything. People are getting great results, but like I say, the caveat is you do need to use a special machine. But I'm mentioning it only, in response to your question, is it dangerous? No, I don't think it's dangerous. You just need to be sensible and not stare at any kind of bright light. And maybe not, especially not just before you're going to sleep. If you're going to use this, because some people use it as an aid to sleep, is just put it on. It will turn itself off after 10 minutes. And then you're not getting that bright light exposure just before you're going to bed.
I've noticed that some people are sensitive just generally to red light panels versus not. Like, I feel like I can't look at it before bed if I'm exposed.
Me
Some
either.
people just knock out.
Yeah, I think it's any kind of, you don't want to see anything really bright, although red light is not going to trigger that same, I was talking about blue light triggering certain chemical cascades. It won't trigger that so much, but any kind of bright light could potentially make that switch for you, so your brain thinks it's daytime. So if you're going to use a light panel at night, maybe, put your back to it, or
turn
it
So
down.
what about the body panel? So you're wearing the headband right now.
Yep.
Do you use the body panel in conjunction? Is it always at the same time? Can you use them separately?
Yeah, I recommend using it at the same time. And this is very simple bit of tech. This is just red and near infrared. It's very soft. It's got a body strap so you can walk around with it, but I just normally tuck it into the top of my yoga legs when I'm doing something, or use it at night just before you go to bed. It's not connected via any technology. The connection is all internal. So all you need to do is do both of them for 10 minutes. The headband is controlled by an app, because as well as utilizing red light, we can also do something called neuromodulation, where you pulse the light at certain frequencies. And that may be super useful for people who are managing symptoms of neurodegeneration, because something like a 40 hertz frequency, you might have heard about this, a gamma frequency, has been found to help people get into a different mental state. So we can switch the light on just 40 times a second. That's all 40 hertz means. So this is controlled by an app, because I have 6 different pulsing schedules. The body panel is just a really simple off and on, because you just want to get maximum light to the gut.
And 10 minutes, because that's the minimum effective dose. And are there diminishing returns after 10 minutes?
No, some people do use it more. The thing is, with red light, you're activating your mitochondria. So the healthier you are, the more your mitochondria are whizzing away, and you can remove waste products that you build from that, the more you can use light, because that's what you're doing. If you have someone that's very, very depleted, you don't want to produce too many waste products, because then, you kind of negate the effect. I don't think you would ever, go back to like a baseline, but I do think there's no point doing it a lot if you're very sick. You need to build it up. But if you're, all of us are biohackers, I could probably use this like 3 or 4 times a day and be totally fine with it, because I have a tolerance. I have my mitochondria. I've probably built more mitochondria in the area of my brain and gut, because I use it all the time. And that's what you want to do. You want to have this cumulative effect where you have more mitochondria in your brain and gut, especially in that prefrontal decision-making place. So it really depends on building up slowly and gradually, and then you can increase the dose.
So really similar to working out and building up muscle strength and endurance, right?
Yep, it's like a
Pressure
hormetic
yourself.
stress, like a low
Right.
level stress, like exercise. Yeah, and that's how I explain it sometimes. You know, if somebody wants to get muscle and they go to the gym once, they're probably not gonna, you know, what's that gonna do? If you were to go once every 3 days for 6 months, you would soon see that you've built up a lot of muscle, and that's exactly what's happening with light. If you use it, you know, very consistently, your body starts to build up the enzymes it needs. It makes more mitochondria, increases blood flow. You get this cumulative effect. It's exactly the same. You get these what are called reactive oxygen species, which are oxidants. You know, we talk a lot about antioxidants and how you want to get oxidants out. But actually, red light therapy does give you a low level of oxidants, for want of a better word, reactive oxygen species. And that is the low level stressor, I think, that also triggers the body to start healing. You know, it's almost like you're aggravating the body a bit, and so it responds. So it's
Right.
exactly the same as exercise, really. It's kind of a very, very low level, easy to manage stress, which causes the body to become more resilient.
Right. I was just wondering if
Yeah.
there was like too much, if there's a U-shaped response where you can actually flood the body or overstimulate mitochondria. But
Yeah, you
as long
probably
as
could.
you,
If you sat on it all day, you probably could. It is a biphasic curve, you know, it's like too little
yeah.
doesn't do anything. Too much, you probably are flooding the body, and but you need to have that kind of just right spot. But I think for most of these devices, anything between like 10 minutes and 60 minutes, if you're a healthy person, is fine. I think that's another biohacker thing, you know, everybody wants to do the max. But
We
but
should
the
So
be
I
like
mentioned it.
Goldilocks. The
Yeah. I just want to
The
mention it
Goldilocks
for
of biohacking.
overachievers out there.
all
Just,
overachievers, yeah, everyone wants to
yeah.
max it out. How much can I possibly do to really get? But the body is very, very energy efficient. Like we know from how my, you know, I'm looking out there at the trees, you know, how chlorophyll works. The body, plants, everything, we use the minimum amount of force to do the maximum amount of work. You know, there's probably all kinds of quantum biology processes going on that allow us to kind of use levers and do things in a very small way. So we don't really need to kind of hit something with a sledgehammer. You know, our bodies are delicate, finely tuned machines. Just a little bit goes a long way. So even though you probably could do this 3 or 4 times if you're a biohacker, you know, 10-minute session is enough. You know, that is enough if you just do it consistently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Goldilocks, as Renee said.
The Goldilocks for cold plunges, saunas, fasting, like everything. We should all be the Goldilocks of biohacking.
Yeah, it's like the Tao, isn't it? The middle way. Choose the middle way. You don't need to
Yeah.
be extreme in these things to kind of get the benefit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Sarah, I have a question for you about the vagus nerve since you had mentioned that before. And it seems like there's all these like vagus nerve stimulators coming out onto the market and they're gaining popularity.
Mm.
Would this do the same thing? Is this strengthening the vagus nerve because of the gut-brain connection?
I think so, because like I say, the vagus nerve is it's a very long nerve, and it kind of innervates a lot of things. So there are various places where the vagus nerve is accessible. So, you know, here in our neck, you know, this is an accessible place. And here down the
Yeah.
front of our body, it's an accessible place. But also in our gut, you know, our vagus nerve is innervating our whole gut. So whether you kind of, I know there are a lot of vagus nerve stimulators that go on the neck. You know, there's
Yeah.
some that you can actually get implanted. I prefer to stimulate the vagus nerve via the gut because I want to avoid everything else that's going on in the neck, because the vagus nerve goes there, but so do a lot of our big blood vessels.
Mm.
So you could put light there and stimulate the vagus nerve, but then you have a chance of opening those big blood vessels. And if you don't watch out, that can make somebody lightheaded because all of a sudden you're changing the blood pressure going to the head.
Oh.
So I think stimulating the vagus nerve by the gut, if you're utilizing light as the stimulus, is a good idea. Some of the vagus nerve stimulate, the devices can be maybe very, very specific, and you're just getting the nerve.
Mm.
But any way you can stimulate it is good. Yeah, this nerve controls so much in the body, and to have, they call it vagal tone. You can kind of assess how healthy your vagal tone is by looking at heart rate variability, is one of the best ways to measure that. And so I know most people have got some kind of metric, an Oura ring or a watch or some kind of wearable that measures vagal tone, heart rate variability, which is inferring vagal tone. So that is some way that I suggest to people to assess these kind of therapies, because that's an indirect way of looking at how good you're doing with kind of toning that vagus nerve.
Yeah, we love HRV. Have you looked at that much in people that have used CeraThrive? I don't know if you've actually done a study or if just observational data.
I have a few studies going on. I have Heads Up platform, which enables me to bring in any kind of wearable that looks at anything, so I can look for trends. So what I tend to see is actually people dip first in their HRV when they start to use the device. And I think that's another indication that it's this hormetic effect, because you have this low level stress, which puts a stress on your nervous system. So the first thing you see is a little dip, actually, usually. And then you start to see a gradual trend upwards as you start to strengthen that, and you start to get that kind of cumulative effect. So that is something that I monitor. Also sleep scores. I like looking at sleep scores because a lot of people see an improvement in their sleep. And it surprises some people because sleep's not a focus and they don't realize how energetic sleep actually is. You know, you need a lot of energy to sleep, and to sleep properly, you know. Your brain is doing amazing things while you sleep. Like, it's actually flushing your brain. There's this thing called lymphatic drainage, where you're actually putting like a liquid up into your body and flushing
Power
out.
washing your brain.
Power washing your brain. But it takes
Car
energy
wash.
to do that. You need the energy to kind of get that going. And so when you do something like red light therapy and you're increasing the amount of ATP available in your brain, you have a lot more energy to do those things that you need to do when you sleep. And then your sleep scores go up because you're kind of then aiding deep sleep. You know, you sleep longer, you have better sleep. So sleep scores is another thing that I like to keep track of when people are doing things like red light therapy, especially for the brain.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's
What about
interesting. The HRV goes down similar to after a workout, right? It dips.
Yeah.
And then we recover and it gets higher. So a lot of similarities there.
I think it's very similar to exercise. I think the body kind of thrives on just a little bit of stress. They call it eustress, don't they? Not de-stress. We don't want to be de-stressed by everything, but if you're eustressed, you know, that's what you need. You know, if you want a seed to grow, you have to like push soil on top of it so it has something to push through. You know, otherwise it's not going to grow. We need to have something to push against in life. So I think these kind of just little bits of stress, exercise, you know, walking, red light therapy, it's all just giving our bodies a challenge that we can then bounce back stronger. So that's why I think you see that dip. The nervous system's like, oh God, what's this? I've got to deal with it. Okay, next time I'll be ready. Next time I'll have more mitochondria. Next time I'll have the energy machinery ready to go. And then you build on that and you get stronger and stronger every time you do it.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, well said. So well said. Sarah, since you are an expert on red light, I was hoping maybe you could dispel some myths going around about red light.
Oh.
And first one I want to start with, I heard a biohacker recently say that we could use red light therapy to offset the time we spend on our computer. Like, we can just sit at our computer and have a red light panel there, and it will offset that. That was not my understanding, and I have not seen any research showing that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, I suppose there's a lot of things going on when we're kind of just sat next to a computer. I mean, there's the light part. So potentially, I don't know. I wouldn't say that I would like to know kind of what the context is, because, you know, obviously having a red light there isn't going to change the fact that you're just sitting still. It's not going to change the fact that you're kind of, you know, absorbed in a task when you do need breaks. I think from a point of view of putting back wavelengths that you're deficient in, potentially it can help you replace that deficiency. And also, you know, we are exposed to blue light from the screen, but it's kind of giving the body a bit of a mixed signal there. So I would say potentially, yeah, you could replace some of the deficient wavelengths, but I think there's a lot going on when you're just stuck in front of a computer that's more than being deficient in red light.
Okay.
That's interesting to think about, though, because you said we have all these receptors for red light. So that sounds like competition. Can you receive blue light and receive red light at the same time? Would one overpower the other, like theoretically?
Yeah. See, this is where it's so interesting, because there's really, I mean, wouldn't that be a fabulous study? But there's no one funding, okay, what happens if you shine blue light and red light at someone at the same time? What receptors are going on? And in fact, we have so little like funding in the industry for those kind of studies. A lot of the studies are done either on animals or even on flies, you know, which is the easiest thing to do. So it's, you know, it's very difficult to have really firm answers to these things, because we just don't know the effect of what's going on. What happens if you shine the light with all different wavelengths at the same time that we wouldn't usually be exposed to in nature? I mean, I think we should always maybe go back to, would that happen in nature? Would you get, these long wavelengths of light in the middle of the day when you usually see blue? No, you wouldn't.
No,
So it's
right.
going to do something a little bit odd to the body. So I would suggest perhaps, by all means use red light when you're sitting at your computer. I don't think it's going to negate the effect. You do also need to have good computer hygiene, make sure you're trying to turn your computer off, put filters on your phones, on your computers, all the things. Just know that you're doing something that's kind of halfway there. You're replacing some of the missing red, but you still also need to think about how you would do that in nature. Does that really fit with what you would do if you were living outside? And if it doesn't, it's kind of a patch, isn't it, at best?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I
great.
think about treadmills, like the earth moving underneath of you rather than you actually progressing through space. I don't know that treadmills are as bad as blue light from a computer, but that's got to be a little confusing to the brain, right? Our body's meant to move through space.
Yeah, and our bodies are meant to feel the terrain, and we're also meant to kind of be exposed to everything else that's in the environment as we walk. As you walk, you kick up the dust, you're kicking up billions of bacteria and things, so it's kind of, maybe you're kind of moving your legs, but are you getting the experience you would get if you went out for a walk?
Yeah, definitely not. I think that's a no. Yeah.
I think that's a no.
I'm curious about some other practices, behaviors that would support the use of this gut brain red light, things that are important that we know of course, like hydration, sleep, movement. Do you have an ideal kind of stack for supporting these light receptors?
Well, very simplistically, it is exactly what we've been talking about. How can you kind of align your day to make it a little bit more natural? So certainly grounding, I think, is one of the main things that you can do. And that's so easy. That is as simple as just going outside and touching the ground. And, even if it's not a very nice day, I mean, I spend a lot of my time in England, you're not going to be walking around barefoot a lot there, but there are a lot of trees you can just get hold of. You just need to be touching something that's embedded in the ground. So I think grounding is a very, very simple one. If you have someone that really is very incapacitated and can't get out, you can get a very simple grounding mat. You can even ground beds. I have a thing on my bed, which is, the sheets are grounding sheets, and I can just put that into an earth point in the plug. So grounding, I think, is probably one of the things that goes best with red light therapy. Of course, eating non-processed foods and avoiding sugar, all of those things are going to help. Anything which strengthens the gut, trying to avoid any kind of toxins, washing your vegetables, not wearing toxic products and shampoos, again, fairly basic. And then now, from the biohacker's point of view, I spend a lot of time at these events where people are talking about peptides. I'm trying a peptide right now. I have the bioregulators that I'm trying. Methylene blue, I'm still researching, because methylene blue is an electron donator and recycler. So it's particularly used with red light therapy. I'm sure you've seen lots of people, even dropping it in their eyes and all kinds of things at the moment at all these events. But it was used historically as an anti-parasitic and an antimicrobial. So I'm still a little bit on the fence. I don't know what you think about this, actually, whether you use methylene blue, just because I don't know if it's long-term good for the gut flora.
I use it strategically when I have jet lag or if I'm sick. Like, it's been helpful when I use COVID. It's not something I'm going to use on the daily.
Yeah, same. And I will say I've strategically combined it with red light, and it feels exponential to me. Like my energy, especially my endurance at the gym when I do them together. But you're right, I wouldn't take it every day. I mean, most supplements you don't want to be taking every day, right? But anything that's going to affect your gut microbiome, even like oregano oil or a certain probiotic, like you're not going to take that every day. So I think, I would be cautious with how often you take methylene blue, and then dosing. I think some people maybe are doing probably higher doses than they need.
Yes,
but
I agree with that.
Fan.
So I think it's something, because anything that you take where it is, because it is in effect a pharmaceutical, anything that you take has a payback, that has there's always going to be some payback for taking a pharmaceutical, you know, whether it's stress on your liver or, you know, whether potentially it could disturb the microbiome. But I do have a lot of people that use my system and that do pair it with methylene blue. And like you said, Renee, get some good results. So I think short term, methylene blue red light is a good combo. Depending on your goal, it's just about depending on what you're trying to achieve. You know, if you're really going for increasing energy for a short-term stint, red light, methylene blue, perhaps some of these gut peptides is a good combo, as well as the real simple things like just grounding and cold exposure. But yeah, I do a lot of those kind of supplement things with caution. The other things I do, you know, walking in nature, you know, all of that I try and fit into a daily regime. I think trying to maximize your light environment in general is only going to help with the red light therapy, you know, trying to kind of keep your circadian biology on track, you know, all the kind of not so sexy things like, you know, going to bed before 10.
I think that's so sexy.
Do you?
I love an early bedtime.
I love being in my pajamas at 8 o'clock. Let's go.
That was me Saturday night. My friends went out at like 8:30 and it was Saturday night. So we were going into daylight saving. And I was like, sorry, I'm already in my PJs.
It's not the night. It's not the night for it.
That's the one night of the year. I'm like, I will not.
Yeah.
You lose that hour. It's so precious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Spoken like true biohackers. But I think that is very true. You know, that is one thing that, you know, very, very simple things that people could do for their health that, you know, it's maybe, you know, not as rock and roll as kind of having a blue mouth or kind of injecting all these crazy things, but probably, you know, bang for your buck, you know, are gonna help long-term recovery the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a quick piggyback question. What about minerals, structured water, hydrogen water? How are you seeing any of these interact with red light, if you have any anecdotal evidence on those?
Interestingly enough, that's how I really got involved with red light therapy. Was before I was researching the brain, I was looking at structured waters. And I was doing a lot of research on structured waters. I went and visited Jerry Pollack, who wrote the book Fourth Phase of Water, in his lab. I went and visited lots of people who were using microwaves and all kinds of things to structure water, and even like, you know, spring water and putting things through special coils. My conclusion was the best way to structure the water in your body is to use light to do it, because you can structure the water in your body by shining light onto your body. Because when light hits a membrane, which is, they call it hydrophilic, it just means water loving. It just means something with a charge, like a cell membrane. Any water that's next to that membrane, a very small part of that water will become structured. You form like a structured layer of ordered water. It's like, it's almost like ice in how it's ordered, but you push the positive part out into the bulk water. So you have this like slippy ice-like structure that's more like a gel. And you do the main way to do that is to shine light, you know, directly onto the body. I think you can do it outside of the body. You can, you know, you can set up a system where you create this structured water outside. I just think why not just cut out the middleman and use the light directly on yourself rather than try to maintain the structure in the water. But that being said, you know, I like the vortexing things where you can structure the water through a vortex. You know, I like the things where you just put your water out in the morning sun and you can structure your water. I mean, good water, I think, again, is one of, you know, a health fundamental. But to me, the very interesting thing is we are so much water, you know, a human is so much as a percentage water molecules. Shining light onto the body is actually changing the structure of water anyway. You're doing it in situ. So that was really my take on it. And that's really why I got involved actually in the first place, is because I was trying to work out how to structure water. And then I thought, let's just do it. Let's structure the water where we're at.
Yeah.
Simplicity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because you don't know what's happening. You can build a structure because it can be fairly transient, these structures. You know, it's very difficult to measure and it's not something that maintains. You know, water is, you know, it's constantly in flux. So if you structure water, as soon as you drink it and it touches all those charged membranes in your body, it's doing its own thing anyway, right? So it's difficult to know if you drink structured water, does it maintain that structure and do anything in your body? And I think that's something we still don't know. But we do know that you can structure the water within your cells by shining light onto them. You know, so to me, that's that's pretty incredible, and something that I think in the future of red light therapy, people will focus on more for sure.
Mm,
I think that's the coolest thing
that's
I've
cool.
learned all year. Thank you. That's so
You
awesome.
can do so much with air, water, and light. Like
Yep.
if people just focused on those three
Yes.
things.
Agreed.
Yeah.
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 So, and it's so overlooked. People are looking for protocols, but they're just sitting indoors with shitty air and not filtering. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Sarah, you are quite the world traveler. So this is a more personal question. Like every time I see you, I'm like, where are you headed next? You know, you're LA, Miami, England, all over the place. Do you use red light to overcome jet lag? Like, or I mean, you're using it every day, but are you strategically using it to overcome jet lag at all?
I Yeah, I mean, I do all the things that you're meant to do. I take my shoes and socks off in the plane and touch the metal on the thing. I put my feet on the floor as soon as I get anywhere. I live wherever I land. So you're right, I do travel. So my next stop is England. So I will just act as if I've been in England. I don't go to bed as soon as I get in because I'm tired. And I don't really suffer with jet lag. I am using red light every day. I'm as much as possible making sure I do, at least 2 hours outside, if not a lot more, but at least that. So I do think that is the key to avoiding jet lag, is to try and normalize yourself to your light environment.
Mm.
And yeah, substituting with red light therapy is certainly not going to hurt for sure.
I wonder if your mitochondria is just like so excellent because you do this consistently. It's like the preventative measure, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. And I
Um,
think your body, whatever you do, the body is just so resilient, as long as you are doing the things like grounding, good food, good water, good friends, your body can adapt. So, at the moment I'm traveling a lot. Maybe if I stopped traveling for a couple of years, I would find it hard again to start. But,
Mm.
I think your body just does adapt as long as you give the body the kind of resources that it needs to do so.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Pretty
want to
amazing.
come back to CeraThrive a little bit more. Can you just tell us a little bit, what am I saying? Wow, more information about how this differs from just a standard red light therapy panel that most people are more aware of or familiar with?
Yeah. So the thing, like I said to you, my main intention for this was to activate the brain and the gut. And so I suppose the main thing to realize is that it isn't easy to get light onto the brain without making sure that you contour the light to the right angle, because you have got a lot of tissue and bone to get through to get light onto the brain. So you do need something that is gonna like contour to the shape of your head. If you're standing in front of a panel and you're kind of glowing red, that's like this bouncing off you. That is what you're seeing returned from you. That's not going in. So in order to get
Mm.
the maximum amount of light, you do really need to have something. So if you look at this whole field of transcranial photobiomodulation, which is just the fancy word for red light therapy for the brain, all of the companies have devices that actually fit flush to the head, because you really do need to have that. And the same with the gut, I think. If you really want to kind of get the maximum amount of dose into the gut, you need to have something that goes up against the skin and fits flush, has the right angle. If you imagine light as kind of like arrows coming at you, if you've got any kind of curve, it's just going to kind of bounce off. The panels are great, though, from a point of view of elevating wellness, but just not so great for a brain health application. So I think that's just the difference. If you're selecting a light therapy device, if it's a panel, a pad, whatever it is, just know your goal. And if your goal is brain health, you probably need to have one that goes on to your flush to your head. So that's why my device does look a bit different to the panels. And I also wanted something portable, because I just wanted to stop any kind, because as I said, you need to do it all the time. So anything that's going to stop people doing it, like you have to be in a special room, or it's too heavy to take on holiday, or whatever it is, it's just another barrier to people using it. So I think from my
Definitely.
point of view, having something that's easy, portable, battery operated, you don't have to be sat next to a plug socket. That's another reason to kind of use these little portable devices, chargeable, just use a USB-C, you can use it anywhere. So the panels are great if you're kind of have something in your gym or at home and you kind of use it every day. These devices are better for targeted gut brain therapy.
Great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
simple.
I love that you don't have to have it plugged in. That's huge. And then also there's no Bluetooth, right? Or you can turn the Bluetooth off
Yes, so
on
I
it.
deliberately wanted to do that. So I do use Bluetooth to set the programs. You don't
Mhm.
have to, by the way. You can put it on. I have one setting which is like the high power setting that you can just do with the device. You don't need to use the app. But the app
Okay.
is Bluetooth controlled, but it's very simple. You just program whatever app you want. And I also have really cool sound files from different people who've done sound files that match the pulsing with music. Like I have Pavel of Noah and Non, or I have this fantastic lady, Paulina, who is in Mexico. She does meditations for gut brain. Actually, Chantel, who also works with me, is a musician. She does ambient music to match the headset. So that's all in the app. But I have a very simple Bluetooth disable. So maybe you can see at the top here, it's just a very
Hmm.
simple switch. You just choose your program and then you just disable the Bluetooth. So
Awesome.
once you've done that, the program runs as usual, but there's no Bluetooth coming off or on the
Great.
headset. And the battery inside is at the front there, but it's double shielded. So there's no non-native EMF. There's only the EMFs you want. There's not the ones you don't want. So that was important for me when I was doing it because, I'm in the whole biohacker thing. Some people don't use it. It depends where you're at. If you're in a mega city block in New York, you're probably so bombarded, it's kind of like a tiny thing. But if you are
Yeah.
very sensitive to Bluetooth, that is something you can do. Just turn the Bluetooth off and then you're not getting that at all.
Yeah. I love that. You
So
thought of
cool.
everything.
I
Yeah.
try I tried to my engine when I gave it to the engineers, they're sitting there, of course, with their like Apple earpods, and they're saying, why would you
Oh.
want to do that? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
people say,
Where do we begin?
why are you
Yeah.
not taking these out?
Oh
Here's some
gosh.
pretender pills, wear those. But yeah, it just depends again on where you're at with it and how sensitive you are.
Right.
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 Right. Yeah.
I have one more
Anything
question
else?
about,
Yeah.
yeah, I have one more question about the device. So the piece that's going on your gut, could you potentially put that like on your lower back or your knee if you have pain in an area?
Oh, sure. It's exactly the same light as you would get for a pain relief device. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just like focusing on the gut brain, but I mean, I did the same
Right.
thing. I was doing squats, ridiculous squats, obviously with terrible form, and hurt my knee. Uh, so I just used it on my knee for a week, and
Okay.
dealt with the knee pain that way, and that went away. So I do use it in other ways. I have people who maybe put it on their chest if they're dealing with some kind of respiratory thing. I've had people who put it here for thyroid. So you can put it wherever you want. Like I say, my protocol is gut brain, so that's what I'm about. But once you've got the
Great.
panel, yeah, people use it for whatever you need, really.
Cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It is. I've used it. It's very soft and flexible and it's like cozy. The
Yeah.
panels are like hard. You're not going to cozy up to a panel.
No.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
Yes, and like I say, make it nice, make it something that people want to use, and then it kind of helps people integrate it into their program,
Yeah.
really. It's all about using it, isn't it? People have a lot of this tech and buy all this tech, and I see a lot of tech at events, but if it ends up under your bed gathering dust, it's not working, is it? So,
Oh
In the
yeah.
biohacking graveyard, as Renee calls
yes,
it.
we've all got one. I'm sure we've all got big
Mine
cupboards.
is this corner over here. I have a special area of my office where things go to collect dust.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we got to use it. Got to
Gotta
use
use
it.
it.
Sarah, can you tell our audience where they can find CeraThrive and more from you, more goodies from you?
Yeah. So it's CeraThrive. I mean, I'm Sarah with an S, but this is Sarah with a C. CERA, CeraThrive. And it's CeraThrive.com. It's CeraThrive on all different socials. And people can contact me through any of those. I always answer my socials myself. Or it's Sarah with an H at CeraThrive.com. Very easy. Sarah at CeraThrive.com.
Excellent. And Sarah, CERA, is relating to the brain. Is that how you
That's right.
landed on it? But I'm assuming there's a play on words, of course, because of your name.
I tried every combination of Lux, of Helios, of, anything you could try, and everything was taken, and in the end I said, right, that's it. We're going to call it Sarah because it
Love
fits,
it.
it's kind of like cerebral, cerebellum, it's a bit of a play on words, but
I
yeah,
love it.
it's a
Yeah,
way
it's
to
so cool.
remember it. Yeah, for sure. Sarah from Sarah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sarah from Sarah. Cool.
Yeah. So we'll link to all that in the show notes so everyone can easily find you. And I believe we have a discount code too, if anyone is interested in getting a CeraThrive unit, Biohacker Babes. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, Sarah.
Pleasure. Yeah, pleasure.
Um, yeah. Okay, one final question for you. Can you leave our audience with a piece of advice, something they should start doing today to optimize their health?
Oh, do you know, I think we more or less covered it. I think the main thing is just realize how important light is in your kind of daily routine and prioritize it mainly. Maybe just try see what it's like to prioritize light for a couple of weeks. So that's like seeing sunrise, putting your feet on the ground, maybe try to do your meetings outside, maybe make sure that you do at least a walk. I think once people start to prioritize, like you start to feel it and experience how much better you feel. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, I'm here in lovely Miami. I'm just looking outside. I'm going to go and sit and work out there for the rest of the day. But even if you're somewhere where, it's not particularly pleasant, even getting out in the rain, can be quite invigorating. You just need to get outside. Your body will thank you for it. So I think just maximize your light environment and try to maybe understand that light is a nutrient. It's almost like food. People know what junk food is and good food, and how, we really know that we should limit junk food and only eat it every now and then. It's the same for light. All this blue light that we see in these kind of badly lit buildings, it's like junk food, junk light for our bodies. So I think my challenge would be just maximize your exposure to natural light for a few weeks and just see how different you feel.
Yeah, I definitely feel the difference when I'm outside more. So
yeah, our bodies want to be outside. We actually produce the equivalent of opiates when we're exposed to sunlight, and it's because your body your body wants you to feel good outside so that you spend more time outside. Biology is very clever. We just have to kind of tune into it.
We got to find the right addictions.
Yes.
Light addiction.
Light addiction.
I'm addicted to light. Nice. My name is Renee and I'm addicted to light. Definitely.
We'll let you keep it, Renee.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sit down. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. It was such an honor to finally have you here. We learned so much, and I'm just like holding on to all these nuggets of information. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us today.
Yes, and it was lovely to see you on here. I'm sure I'll see you in real life at one of these events soon. So yeah, looking forward to that.
We always do. Sarah's always wearing pink. It's pretty much Biohacker Babes pink. So I'm like,
yeah. She is a Biohacker babe. Yeah,
it's your power color. So we're the pink ladies right here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the pink ladies. I love that.
Well, thank you. Awesome. Enjoy your time in Florida and the States, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
And thanks to everyone that tuned in today. We'll see you next time.